Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Campbell. I am the director of the Women Business Center, and I want to welcome you to the inaugural WomanLed presentation. First off, before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about the Women Business Center at Cornerstone Alliance.
My name is Brandon Campbell. I am the director of the Women Business Center.
And so the Women's Business Center at Cornerstone Alliance is a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration that focuses on helping women, Blacks, Latinx, veterans, and low-income individuals start and grow businesses through one-on-one business counseling, topical trainings, technical assistance, and helping them gain access to financial capital. And so we're excited to be here today. Since 2004, Women's Business Center at Cornerstone Alliance have helped hundreds of businesses start, grow, also gain access to capital, because at the Women Business Center, it's essential to us, not that you just start a business, but that you grow a business and impact the community. The Women Business Center, we focus in 3 main counties, that is Berrien County, Van Buren County, also Cass County here in Southwest Michigan. And so let me tell you a little bit more about WomanLed. The WomanLed program is a virtual speaker series focused on topics centered on the empowerment of women entrepreneurs. Each segment that we do will feature a successful woman who will share her experiences, triumphs over adversity, and leadership tips. Today, we have the pleasure of having Charmaine Brown, who's the owner of Connexions Consulting and president of the National Association of Women Business Owners of Greater Detroit, as our special guest. So we're very lucky to have her in on this live virtual chat today. It's going to be moderated by our very own Kristen Patsier, who is the WBC's manager. But before I introduce Kristen, I'd like to take a moment to kind of give you some of our upcoming events so that you can engage with us, which is very important. So on April the 13th, we have our orientation program, which is Learn, Know, Grow, an introduction to small business services. It is, as I mentioned, it's a virtual program. It's going to be at 9 a.m. And so this is for individuals who's looking to gain resources and also one-on-one business counseling through the Women Business Center. So it is a prerequisite course for you to attend. You know, we're going to be going over some of our resources, our programs, as well as some of the tools that we use to help businesses, and also talk to you about some lending opportunities through our microloan program as well too. So we're looking forward to seeing you be a part of that program. Also, April the 19th, we have our Marketing Mondays, Marketing Planning and Strategies 101. That too will be a virtual event. It's going to be at 3 p.m. We have an expert trainer who is a marketing guru. Name is Julie Nitz, who's the owner of JLN Studio, who will help alleviate your headaches by teaching you some strategies to help you find, connect, and sell to your customers. So whether you are a startup or established business, you will be taught how to be more effective and self-sufficient as a marketer. Here are a few key takeaways that you will be gaining from this experience, and it's how to create a cohesive look for your business, how to choose imagery for social media and your website, and as well as the importance of setting up a Google My Business page, which is very important for those who are starting business or who are in business looking to grow. To register and also to find out more information about the WBC and schedule your first one-on-one meeting if you've already gone to our Small Business Services Learn, Know, Grow presentation, please do contact us. You can also find our information on facebook.com/WBC at Cornerstone Alliance. Want you to engage with us, so please feel free to reach out to us and like us on Facebook and share information. Another quick note I would like to make is that on April the 9th, will be Entrepreneurship Week, which is the deadline for those who's looking to nominate your favorite business owners for the Entrepreneurs of the Year Award. That program is sponsored and brought to you by SCORE, as well as in partnership with the Women Business Center. And so the winners will be announced on May the 7th. So we want to get as many entrepreneurs nominated. So if you have information or you have questions about that, please contact SCORE of Southwest Michigan, located in Kalamazoo. Okay, so now the moment that we've all been waiting for, so that you all know that if you are, been anticipating this event, I know I'm excited about this. It's a part of empowering women. And so me being a girl's dad, I have all daughters, I'm all for these type of programs. And so I'm proud to be the director of the Women Business Center. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Kristen Patchier, the WBC's manager and the moderator for today's program. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you, Brandon. And thanks to all of you attendees for joining us on your lunch hour today. I'll just start out by saying we will have a Q&A at the end. We'll reserve questions for then. But as we're going along, please feel free to put questions in the chat. Brandon and I will be monitoring that, and we'll address your questions at the end. So without further ado, Charmaine, we are so thrilled to have you with us today. Charmaine Brown is an entrepreneur, inclusion, equity, and diversity expert and community capacity builder. As Brandon mentioned, she's the founder and president of Connexions Consulting. It's based in the Detroit area. And in addition to that, she's the president of the National Association of Women's Business Owners Greater Detroit chapter. Charmaine is a passionate inclusion advocate committing to helping leaders draw the connection between inclusive behaviors and high-performing and profitable organizations. Charmaine has over 28 years of experience in strategic human resources, diversity and inclusion, human resource compliance, and philanthropy. And her experience ranges in industries including real estate, banking, healthcare, nonprofits, and she has a demonstrated expertise in building inclusion and diversity programs from the ground up, from infancy to being nationally recognized. In addition to that, she's cultivated an extensive network of community partnerships on the national, regional, and local levels, aimed at enhancing community capacity building efforts. So wow, Charmaine, that's quite an accomplished list there. So let's start out, and we'd like to hear from you. Tell us about your background and how you got started on your career path, and what was your aha moment that led you to take that leap and start Connexions?
Oh, well, Kristen and Brandon, thank you so much for having me here today.
You're welcome.
And it's exciting that you were able to kick off this great program and initiative, and I'm happy to be the first. So interestingly, I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I was born and raised there. Attended Michigan State University for undergrad because everyone was going to Ohio State and I didn't want to go to Ohio State. So I am a Spartan. I went back to Cleveland and I built my professional career, kind of fell into human resources, kind of going up the ladder in terms of being a headhunter for the Urban League of Greater Cleveland, where I placed minority business professionals in the banking industry and really had a passion and an interest in helping people of color to seek out opportunities. And then I was shortly recruited into a bank and started off as a recruiter, but then I moved into the compliance arena. The banks were, required to do affirmative action planning and government reporting, and it just became this natural fit for me. I really excelled in that space, which then led me to being tapped on the shoulder to engage with the leadership team around, at that time, it was just called diversity. And so I spent quite a number of months, actually almost a whole year, working with a consultant and with the leadership, the executive leadership team, on building their capacity and kind of owning this work before we pushed it out into the rest of the organization. And so again, I kind of built my legs and built my expertise as I went along. And then the bank was bought out. I moved over to a national real estate company where I started their program from scratch. And when I say scratch, I'm talking like no infrastructure was in place. No one really understood what the work meant. There was a lot of processes and practices that had to be put in place. But I spent almost 12 years there, and it was probably one of the most pivotal career moments of my life, because they allowed me to do some things that I don't think a lot of other organizations were doing at that time. And so that really helped, one, me to kind of continue to build my expertise and my love for diversity and inclusion. And then also helping people to kind of see the connection between how it not only benefits you as an individual, how it benefits you as a team, but how it benefits the organization. So we fast tracked 2015. My husband works for Plant Moran, which is pretty well-known firm here in Michigan, and he's on the cybersecurity side. And so he had the opportunity to grow his career and get promoted. And so we made the decision to leave Cleveland, Ohio, and move to Michigan, to Detroit. So I've been in Detroit for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years at the end of July. And my original plan was to look for a chief diversity officer role here in the Detroit market. But, the stars aligned, and with a lot of pushing and support from my networks and from my mentors, and including my husband, I started up Connexions Consulting almost 5.5 years ago. And I will tell you that I don't know that I would ever go back inside now if I had to, because there is just something so freeing and liberating, but challenging about being on the side of entrepreneurship that I just have really rolled my sleeves up and really gotten into. But if you had asked me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whether I was going to be an entrepreneur, I would have lost my life savings, because I would have bet you that I was going to, retire from corporate life. And here we are now.
So like you said, you wouldn't want to go back. So, and I know we have
I can help it.
People, on this call that maybe small business owners themselves are thinking about taking that plunge.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, though, that no matter, you think about, there's entrepreneurs, there's managers, and there's technicians, kind of thinking about it in those three components. And, the entrepreneurs are very visionary, right? They are thinking long-term. Your managers are putting policies and processes and foundational things in place, like to have order And then you have your technicians. Those are your subject matter experts, right? They're the ones who are really doing the work.
Right.
When I first got into this, even though I hadn't really put my entrepreneurship hat on,
Right.
I was more a technician, right? I was the one with the expertise. I was the one who knew how to develop diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from scratch. But there's other sides of this entrepreneur, owning a business that I had to learn as I navigated over these past few years, and I'm still learning. So I think sometimes when you get into those situations where you have this really great idea or you do something really well, it's also important to make sure that you find the resources to help you to continue to see the vision, right? To take on that entrepreneurship role and to put systems in place, processes and systems in place. Because as you grow, so does everything else. And you've got to be able to have the right infrastructure in place. So these are things that I'm learning as I'm growing, as I'm going. If I could give any advice, it would be to make sure that you surround yourself with people who have those skills and those expertise, the things that you don't necessarily have.
Well, that's great advice because
Yeah.
it helps to, because you're focusing on what you do and do best.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's all of these other things that you don't think about and take for granted that other people in your organization are taking care of. So
Oh yeah, it's a little different when you're by yourself.
exactly. All right. Well, now we're going to talk about what I was going to say 2020, which seems, I was going to say last year, but I don't feel like it's last year. I feel like we're still, this 2021 is still 2020.
Just wants to hang on to us.
So we'll start with our favorite topic, the pandemic and COVID-19. And I know women especially were hit hard by this in the sense that they had to very quickly learn how to adapt and balance a boardroom / work life and career with home life. So all of a sudden there's no child care or resources, or maybe your family helped, but you can't be with family anymore. And so I'm interested to hear from you how you handled that, even specific examples, what your day-to-day looked like. And honestly, like I said, I think we're still in this. It's not over. So
what's interesting is what we do know about gender dynamics is that women generally are really good at multitasking and handling and juggling multiple things, right?
right.
And so that didn't necessarily change, but the intensity and the emotions and the confusion and the concern about life was so much more real for all of us, right? Because unfortunately people were dying and people were getting sick and all the things. And so for me, my husband traveled a lot. And so the fact that he was here 24/7 was also interesting. My daughter,
based, right? Anyway, so
I am home based,
right?
Yes. So my business is home based. Prior to the pandemic, my business primarily was home office. And I would travel to work with my clients, but my office, I don't have a building or an office building. My home is my office. My husband, however, traveled a lot. And when he wasn't traveling, typically he was in the office, his office. My daughter, obviously, I have a 13-year-old. She was 12 last year. She went to school. Now everyone is in the house. So having to try to manage, a different flow with having everyone in the home was an opportunity.
It's a nice word for it.
Yes, it was challenging at times, but luckily, everyone went to their corners of the house
Right.
as needed. So we had to get into a new flow. From the NABO perspective, we had to literally convert everything virtual. And that also included pushing off, not canceling, but pushing off in-person events and meetings, and just trying to really get a good understanding of how to support our members as we ourselves, because the board members, it's volunteer, and we are all business owners. And some of us were really struggling with the impact that COVID had on their businesses. You had event planning, with valet services, that's kind of in-service, in-person type businesses that were hit hard. And so we converted everything virtual. And instead of us trying to be all things to all people, we decided we would just be a place of peace and an hour just to take your business hat off and just be for a moment. So that was really the value that we brought to our members during that time. So we'd have these happy hours, and I ran them, and I love to have a good time. So we made sure we had a good time, even though we were probably like going nuts, right? From life and from and trying to figure out our businesses. And then my clients, I was very fortunate going into 2020 that I actually had contracts signed. Mm-hmm. So while business wasn't pulled, business slowed down in the sense that we kind of kicked timelines down the road a little bit, just to kind of see how things were going. Especially with a lot of my clients having to transition their employees to working virtual, right? So there was a lot of things that were in flux. So it did give me a little bit of a chance to catch my breath, because 2020, when I started 2020, was not going to be a year of catching my breath. It was going to be a year of just going, right? Contracts are signed, business opportunities out the yang. I mean, we were gonna go. And then of course, March hit and everything kind of slowed down.
And I think it took a minute too to even process all of that. Like it was almost like feeling like we were in an alternate universe. Like, is this for real? And
yeah, that was like the first week or two. Yeah, and then the last 2 weeks of the first month, what felt very morbid. It felt, you could just feel it all around you. And then you started to hear unfortunate, losses, and businesses were struggling. I mean, it was just an intense place to be. And while some folks relished in the idea of slowing down and maybe pulling out some of those passion projects that they've always wanted to do but never had the time, there was a little bit of a gift in the slowdown for some people, right? Some businesses were born out of COVID. Some passions were ignited or reignited as a result, because everything slowed down. And yet it was still very dramatic for folks. And, but in terms of my specific business, my business slowed down until May 25th. Okay. And May 25th, George Floyd.
Yeah.
And of course, the trial is taking place now. But that is when my business literally took I don't know, is it 1,000% degree turn?
Well, I can imagine, and that was our next, what we were going to move into is, talk about that and
Yeah,
how your
yeah,
work has changed and how it's impacted Connections, and how did you advise your clients during
yeah.
that time?
So I guess the best way to describe that that time last year, it was the perfect ugly storm. And I remember kind of struggling with the fact that my business was actually taking off as a result of this horrific situation.
Oh, I didn't
That's,
even think about it that way.
that's been there forever. It's not like
Right.
it's new. It's just, it was the perfect ugly storm where everyone was at home. Everyone was grounded, right? We were
Mhm.
quarantined. All you could do was watch TV
Yeah.
and listen. Unfortunately, losses were happening all around. It was not unheard of to be more visible with the inequities in healthcare because of the impact of certain communities with COVID versus others. It wasn't unnatural to understand the impact of education and how the pandemic has impacted certain communities over others. So everyone was paying a heck of a lot more attention. So equity or the inequities that have always existed in our country were elevated to a whole nother level. And then you add on top of that George Floyd, everyone witnessing it, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, like all within a relatively short period of time. Organizations who were also dealing with, how are we handling our business and how are we making sure our employees are okay, had to actually stop and deal with the realities. I saw more CEOs becoming incredibly vulnerable, which is something you don't normally see. CEOs, leaders, they're supposed to have the answers for everything.
Right.
They're not supposed to show vulnerability. But in that instance, they had to. And so what happened for my business was lots of phone calls. We have to get a statement out, but we want to get a statement out that's heartfelt. And so it was like, okay, CEO, you and I need to talk. Let's talk about where your life has been. What have you seen? What have you experienced? What have you not experienced? Because you want this to be real and authentic. I need to know more about you. Okay. So
Right.
started to do that. And then organizations wanted to create safe spaces for employees to just talk about what was on their hearts and what was on their minds. Talk about difference.
I was just going to say that's completely different.
Well, guess what? Can't avoid it now, right? We
Right.
can try to businessmatize. That's a saying. It's not a real word, y'all, but I just came up with
It works.
We can try to, business diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the reality is we were dealing with people, we were dealing with humans, we were dealing with humanity, right? And it just totally changed the direction that many organizations went through. So I have received, as many of my diversity practitioner colleagues, tons and tons of calls and opportunities, because where it may not have been a priority for them, it became a priority, right, for many organizations. And where my sweet spot is, I help organizations who are at the beginning stages of the journey, right?
Right.
So they don't even know what the issues really are in their organizations. They don't know where they have strengths and where they have opportunities. And they certainly don't have a plan of action. And so my business increased tenfold because of it, which has in some ways pushed me to think about scaling my business and no longer becoming a quote unquote solopreneur, right? So I've been able to help some of my business colleagues whose businesses have been impacted and hey, they've not seen that resurgence in their business yet, by bringing them in to help me with my projects. And so I feel really good about the fact that one, Connexions Consulting is growing. I'm also helping my colleagues and my friends who are in different spaces, but have value that they can provide to my business while they're trying to figure out how to scale their own, right? So I feel that kind of give back component, but it's really helping the business.
So and I know it can be overwhelming. I'm going back to what you said, starting from square one. What specific steps or advice do you have for those business owners, or even on a personal level, for people to take those steps? What are the necessary changes needed, or how do you start?
Yeah.
How do you learn?
Yeah. So organizationally, we'll start there because that's the easier part.
Right.
Organizationally, you can't fix what you don't know or what you don't understand. And so that's why I oftentimes will do strategic assessments. And it's important to understand the voices of your employees, their experiences with a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, right? Oftentimes organizations will do employee engagement surveys, but they won't necessarily break that information down by demographics, right? I want to know if women are experiencing the workplace different from men. I want to know if, those under the age of 40 are experiencing the workplace different than those over, or vice versa, right? So, when you think about breaking those dimensions down and understanding where are the gaps, that's one thing.
Okay.
Yes, learning and development is really important, but I find that organizations always will run to training as the solution. And it is not. It is one piece of a much larger portion. But when you talk about personal development, I think it's important to first recognize your own privilege. And that's hard to do sometimes. So, Kristen, you and I were talking last week, and I was saying that, I have a point of privilege, even though I am an African-American female, I have a point of privilege because I grew up in the suburbs. I didn't grow up in the city. There's a point of privilege there that I have to recognize that my education, resources, and access that I got was very different than some of my friends who went to public schools in the city, right? We all have different levels of privilege, but recognizing when you have privilege that others don't, calls upon you to have those conversations, right? To say, wait a minute, why is it that, we have our gender in common, right? We talked about this. We have our gender in common. We're women. Yeah, we're women. Women rock. And yet there are some differences that I experience as an African-American female that you may not experience, Kristen, right? They call it intersectionality. So it's about listening and seeking to understand and learn, as opposed to minimizing or ignoring those differences, right? And then how can you be the champion? Be in the room, be the sponsor in the room when I'm not in the room, and opportunities come up or situations come up. You being that voice is the role that an advocate plays, that a sponsor plays, that a champion plays. So it's just about leaning into the challenge, leaning into the difficult parts of it. And it's hard to do when you don't necessarily have the resources or the relationships to do so. And not expect that people who, so for instance, Charmaine can't always coach a Kristen, right?
Right.
Because Kristen's got to be able to own her own learning and development. But those are some of the ways that individually we can start to improve and make changes.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move now to more on the entrepreneurship, women in entrepreneurship. And I'm interested to hear, what is your advice for those women who are considering starting their own businesses, but they're held back by fear? And especially during this time, our whole conversation to this point, we're in such an uncertain time right now.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that adds another layer.
Well, let me be honest and say I walk in fear every single day, but I just push through it. And I know that's easier said than done. I mean, you should see me, when I'm not on camera. But so you see this, this saying right here, you got this. That's what I use to push myself out of fear, because, it's the saying that fear is nothing but false evidence appearing real. And sometimes that fear all the time, that fear can get in the way of us really stepping into our purpose, stepping into our passion. And I think it's important for you to, one, recognize what that fear is, and then get people, your board of directors, your networks, people who are going to tell it like it is, not people who will tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
Make sure that they understand what your fears are, and that they hold you accountable for pushing through, for going towards that goal. So and I would not have known this had I not jumped into entrepreneurship. But what I have found is the one thing we don't do is we don't speak it into the universe. We sure as heck don't write it down. And we don't write it down in a way that says, I'm just going to put this on paper, this idea on paper, without boundaries, without telling myself why I can't do it, but telling myself, I can do this. This is what it's going to look like, like speaking
Right.
in the affirmative. It sounds simple, but it's what gets in our way. Literally, it gets in our way. We do not move past that because we're like, I can't start that business because I don't have any money.
Right.
I can't leave my job because, who's going to buy from me? Like, it's all the things that, as my one friend says, the stinking thinking, or the hag in the attic.
The voices in your head.
The voices in your head that tell you why you can't do it. And even if you just committed once a week for a month to what I call power hours, where you just spend 1 hour sewing into that idea without boundaries. You want to make $500,000 in the next 2 years? All right, put it down, write it down, and then write all the things that you need to do to get there. And if you don't know, then that's when you use resources like the Women's Business Center. I will tell you, for me, and this is God honest truth, I called some of my girlfriends who I know would tell me exactly what I needed to hear. And I laid out an idea for them. And I let them give me feedback. And it was done in a safe and loving space. And it really helps you. It helps you to kind of put the pieces together to start to create the thing that you've been wanting to do for the longest. We just fear holds us back.
Just to say that, get it out of your head.
Get it out of your head, because what you will find is The week when you come back to your power hour to work on it, you might see, oh my God, this is actually doable. And then the third week, by then you're ready to go to the Women's Business Center and say, look, I got an idea. What do I need to do?
I love that power hour. You could do that for a lot of different
A whole lot of different
ways.
things.
Right, right. But it's just committing the time, getting it out of your head, and
Yeah. I just joined this multicultural women's entrepreneurship program through USC. We had our session over the weekend. Really fabulous program. And one of my cohort partners, she was talking about how she had to get off a phone call to get on our session. And she said to them, excuse me, I've got to go. I have to go live my life for me. And I thought, how often do we say that? How often do we invest in ourselves, right? So that idea that you have, that business concept, even if it's small, go for it. If you're working a 9-to-5 job, okay, do your 9-to-5 job and do your side hustle, because your side hustle can turn into a full hustle, right? So there's so many different ways that you can get at it. But the first step is just moving through the fear, because I'm not going to tell you not to be fearful, because I'm fearful every single day. I just find a way to move through it. I can't get around it. I can't avoid it. I just go through it, and I'm much better off in the end, in the long run. So
that's excellent advice. And for women especially, I think, it's just that building confidence.
Yeah.
And it's the voices that hold us back.
But here's the secret. Every successful woman that you know, or that you perceive as successful, goes through the same thing. It's just part of who we are. It just is. So you just know you're not the only one. And yet we still find a way, right? You push through.
Right. You just as they say, just do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And try not to, I guess, think about it too, overthink it, we'll say.
Oh yeah. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
I know. And I struggle with that too, right? Because I want things to be perfect, but then I have to remind myself that, Charmaine, the 80-20 rule is good. Nothing is going to be perfect. You're going to have to adjust and flex and change and adjust and flex and change all the time. So, and it's okay. It really is okay.
Yeah, the perfectionism is a big issue. It used to be almost, when I was younger, almost paralyzing. What if I made a mistake? What if I don't do this perfectly? And
it's hard, but think about this. When have you learned the most?
Right.
When you've made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
You don't learn when you're perfect and everything is done well. You learn when you screwed up, or when there was mistakes that have taken place. That's when we learn. But it's hard, but it's necessary.
So how have you found, and any advice you have for, especially again, during this time, during the pandemic, for female entrepreneurs to stay connected and support one another? What have you been doing? And
so I am by nature a people person. By nature, I'm super extroverted. So, my friends had to check up on me quite a bit over COVID, because I was losing my mind, because I couldn't touch and feel people. I couldn't hug folks, so I became super addicted to Zoom. But it's so important that you create networks of resources. and they all should not be the same. My Nabo sisters help me with business. My Nabo sisters are people that I can go to when when I got the hag in the attic,
Yeah.
and I'm got that stinking thinking. My Nabo sisters are a place of love and support. Then I have my girlfriends, right, who are doing some amazing things. And sometimes that crosses over into us supporting each other from a career standpoint. But, I got my sister girlfriends. And I have what I call my board of directors that comprises of men and women who comprise of different ethnicities. Because I've learned, even though my career has been predominantly in an all white male environment, I've learned so much from some of my white male counterparts that has really helped me in how I'm navigating different organizations, different styles of leadership. I mean, and so I lean on them as well. So I would say that, your system of support should not always give you the same things, right?
Right.
You should diversify your
There you
system
go.
of support. There we go.
Right.
Diversify your system of support, and where you're feeling like you're lacking in certain things, like finances are a struggle. I am not the accountant. I don't like the numbers, right? So I
Right.
have a resource. Thank God I also have a husband resource too. But, I lean on people who I don't have the best knowledge, or it's just not of interest to me, but it's important that I know these things. And so that's how I build my resources and my networks, and not feel bad, not feel like you have to have the answers to everything. And I think that's also another issue for us, is that we think that we are supposed to know already. We're supposed to know when we're supposed to file our taxes, business taxes, by the way.
Right.
We're supposed to know how to reconcile. Who said? Remember, I'm the technician, right? I'm the expert on DE&I. I help companies. I don't do bookkeeping. You see what I'm saying? So we have to understand where our gaps are, and then look for those resources, and not feel bad, feel a sense of shame because you don't know.
Oh, that's a great point too.
That creeps
That
in.
goes back into the perfectionism thing.
It creeps in all the time. It creeps in all the time.
Well, Charmaine, I see our chat box
popping
up. So I think we're going to move to our Q&A. I can read these. Let me back.
Oh, I think Margaret Adams.
Oh, you can seem to. Yeah. How do you want to?
How long did it take for me to receive an owner's draw from the business? Okay, so transparency is really important, right? I didn't know what the heck I was doing in the beginning. And so I took an owner's draw all the time. My first year was it was a good year for me, because I had never anticipated, and this is coming from someone who made really good money in corporate America. When I got my first contract, it was $12,500. And then I think I maybe earned the first year $35,000. And I hadn't earned 35. Well, the business revenue was $35,000. The last time I made $35,000, I was right out of college. So that was for me, the shift in like, you're not making six figures anymore, you're making $35,000. That was a huge shift for me. But I will tell you that depending on the type of business that you have, you do have to be intentional and planful, but the ramp up time for business varies. I struggled my second year because I was so busy implementing work that I didn't do enough business development. So when year 3, I learned you got to business develop and implement at the same time. You can't let the business development side go, because I didn't want to have another year like my second year where it got dry, right? But then also I had to start putting systems in place to ensure that there was some consistent business development going while I was implementing. For me, year 4 and 5 is where I'm starting to see I'm reaping the benefits of having invested in the business over the past 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, Margaret, for that one. Let's see. We've got, we have one from Kim here. Do you see that? You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. So humility and empathy have been most critical skill sets. So I took a sister song during which one of the founders asked what she would say to white women who spend a lot of time and effort advocating for communities of color. She said, "I don't need you to help me. Help yourselves and get out of the way." I found her words to be so profound. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about how I can work to shift the narrative to explain that when we identify and remove barriers for people of color, we make things better for everyone. Do you have any thoughts around how we shift that narrative?
Yeah, I think part of the challenge and the issue is that because there has been such a lack of trust, when you think about it, and I'm going to speak from my own experience, but then I'm going to generalize, in particular African American females that have had to navigate the work environment in a way that has been very difficult for us, right? So we have had to do what's called code switching. Code switching is where I can speak very professional King's language. She speaks so intelligent, right? And then with my sister girls, I can be like, girl, please, kind of lax my language. But in corporate environments, I had to code switch in order to, one, be able to be successful and to be heard and to be taken seriously. And unfortunately, there has been such a lack of trust that white women don't understand, right? Because in some instances, and I'll give an example, someone that I love dearly, she was a leader in the organization. She was an Italian female, very respectable. I had an experience that I shared with her that, was along the lines of, I felt that I was being treated differently because I was African American. And she minimized my experience. And as a way to say, oh no, honey, that's not, you should not have interpreted it that way. And oftentimes that's what has happened with African American females, to the point that they stopped sharing, right? We just stop sharing. We're sharing our own circles, our own tribes, our experiences, but I would never come and talk to a Kristen about it ever again. And mind you, I'm in the diversity role, right? And I'm experiencing
Quit doing,
it.
yeah.
Right. And so I think sometimes it's the defense mechanism is that, and it's an and proposition for me. Yes, I love the fact that you are advocating and you are championing and you're trying to remove barriers based on the privilege that you have, right? Because sometimes you need to step up into your level of ownership and privilege of where you have influence to make change. And you have to also understand that this is not taking on this kind of savior mentality is where that pushback comes from, right? That, you know, because of my privilege, I can go in and I can make these changes for you and you should appreciate that I did that. So don't tell me that, you know, I don't need your help. It's coming from a place of, okay, but are you doing it because you want the credit, or are you really doing it because you really feel this is the right thing to do? And that regardless of who agrees or gives you credit, it's the right thing for you to do. So without kind of Kim knowing all the dynamics, right? Because nothing is, I believe that multiple realities exist at the same time. So it's very hard to, I guess, give the best answer without knowing all the dynamics of it. But I would say that part of why that, why it gets delivered as, I don't need you to help me, help yourself and get out of the way, is a, you know, it's a defense mechanism because we've been conditioned for so long that, you know, white privilege in particular, white female privilege in particular, has always been a barrier. And so now you recognize it. This is, I'm telling you what's probably part of the defense mechanism. Now you recognize it, and I'm supposed to be happy about that. So, you know, and everyone is at different levels of this whole spectrum, that there is not one size fits all. There's not a one size fits all. I have no problems with sitting down and having a frank, open, crucial conversation with anybody. But my girlfriend, my sister girlfriend, she's not interested. And nor should she have to, right? So it's, yeah. And I could go on and on, but I'll put a pin in it for now.
Yes, so Kim says, yes, and isn't that always a better approach? The savior piece is so important to understand, and working from a place of solidarity and not being a savior. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, and I think in our best intentions, right, there's the issue of intent versus impact. We spend so much time defending our intentions instead of addressing the impact, right? And I think that's part of the other issue that happens and why that gets in the way. But we could use that even in our own personal lives with our spouses and friends and children. Okay, let's see.
Hey, do we have?
Oh, Candy. Oh, I'm happy to connect with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Will you all provide information to the participants?
Yeah, we can, as far as how to contact Charmaine, their website, and
yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. So Candy, in particular, please reach out to me and just remind me that we connected through this event.
yeah, let's see. I think we've covered.
Okay.
All right. Well, Charmaine, I can't thank you enough. We could just keep talking,
I
but
know we
I'm
could.
getting a cue that we need
Brandon
to-
saying, cut the
Yeah,
cord, cut the cord.
Brandon has also just put Charmaine's contact info in the chat, phone
Thank you.
number. I'm just thank you, Brandon. Well,
Thank
this
you,
was so
Brandon.
wonderful. I know that I've gained quite a bit of insight from you today, and we're thrilled to have had you as our initial woman-led guest.
Yes, thank you
We're
so much for having me.
for you as well at the Women's Business Center at Cornerstone Alliance. You can reach us anytime, cornerstonewbc.com. All of our contacts information is there, mine and Brandon's. So thank you again for joining us today. And thank you, Charmaine, so much. This was great.
Thank you.